Now, if you have your basic control_anims function created with the button timeline and number of frames, you'll notice that we just have a mouse down handler. And let's go ahead and test this out, and I want to show you what the problem is. So go to Control Test Movie. There we go, Control Test Movie. And take a look at what happens. Now, we're outputting the information about our movie the first time. Then we can play and we can stop. But if we start to rewind, notice that right now it's jumping 5 frames forward and 5 frames back. Right now it's at 21. I can jump back to 16, then to 11, then to 6. Now it started at frame 1, so that's why, of course, the numbers are different. If I get all the way to 30, it can't go any further than 30, so now it'll be jumping back to 5s instead of starting at 1. Anyway, I'm going to go back to the very beginning, so I'm back at frame 1, and watch what happens when I press currentFrame now. Now it jumps to 11. Also notice that it's output that information again. So let me go back to frame 1 again. It's output the information one more time, so 3 times. Now it's going to 16. Go back. Now it's going to 21. Go back. Now it's going to 26. Go back. Now it's going to 30. So here's one of the really interesting things about using actionscript, and that is when you use event listeners and you allow it to ever go back to where the code is instantiated, then what happens is it's adding the event listeners to existing event listeners. So it means that the stage event listener for the mouse handler has been added as many times as we've run that code. In fact, it's been added, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 times. So that's obviously not what we want. So here is a good reason that we might want to separate our event handlers from our functions. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of move all of my event handlers up to the top of my page underneath those traces. And it would be nice to have some comments in there just so I knew which ones were which. Let me find that stage event handler. I'm going to move that up here. It's kind of in the order that I have my information. And you'll notice that I've got all this stuff that's going to be running at the top. And that is because I want those things to run only one time. That's why I've kind of moved everything up there to the top. So I know these are when everything is invoked. And these are all the definitions of what the functions are. Whether you have one at the bottom or the top doesn't really matter, but this is a good structure to have. And it's pretty common. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to wrap all of this with something new. And I'm going to create a variable called var firstTime. And when I create the variable, all I'm doing is creating a blank variable this time. There's really nothing in it. If I wanted to be to give it an actual number or something, I could, but it doesn't really matter for what we're about to do. So now I'm going to create a conditional statement that says if firstTime equals, so I have a comparison, null, then what it's going to do is go ahead and run everything that's inside the firstTime. Now I'll go back to the end and insert my curly bracket, and right before the curly bracket I'm going to change firstTime equals false or true. It doesn't even matter what I set it to now. Whatever value that I give it is going to be fine. So let's go ahead. Whoops, I meant to do the auto format. You'll see it's inset everything. So it says now if the firstTime equals null, run all this stuff, and at the end it's going to run it, change the firstTime so it has a different value. Now what's cool about this is that we won't run this particular function anymore. So as I go to the different forward and back, notice that it's never run that function again. So it only runs one time. That's a really nifty little way to make sure that your code will only run once if you are jumping back to the beginning of your file for some reason. And as you have complex projects, it's really good to make sure that you have certain pieces of code only one run time for the file. And so that's the end of this tutorial. We're going to go and look at how to use the mouse up with these for repeating events in the next tutorial.